Right. So excited. My name's David Levitas. I'm the Executive Director of LA Forward and LA Forward Action. And so excited for this climate meeting and to introduce Shula Green, our fearless leader. So Shula, take it away.
All right. So as I was saying, we are, for the most part, other than a few exceptions, a completely grassroots volunteer-led organization. I'm no different. I'm here because after Trump was elected in 2016, I was looking for something to do. And I literally had no idea what to do. I am a clinical psychologist and neuroscientist as my day job. And I kind of, for most of my life, had been very interested in kind of social justice and doing that through my work, but had kind of had this idea that politics are left to the politicians and not something that I necessarily needed to be active in or involved in. And the 2016 election really changed that. That kind of opened my eyes to the fact that we all need to be involved. Kind of this idea of civics, that like we should all be, if we're not all active all the time and kind of paying attention, a lot of stuff can happen that's not good for us and for our communities. So I explored a lot of options. I ended up sticking with LA Forward because for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is just the relationships that I was able to form with the people there. Is that just, it's a really great group of people. There's so many people now that I've come to be really close with, that we've worked on different campaigns and actions and elections together. And I think that's one of the great parts of LA Forward is you kind of keep coming back because of the connections that you form with people who share your values, hopefully. And so I was working on a lot of different issues after, I'm sure all of you kind of shared this experience after the 2016 election. It was like economic justice, racial justice, voting rights, women's rights. It was like everything, everything was horrible. Every issue seemed kind of like the most important issue. And I think that climate started to hit home for me through some personal experiences I had. And I'd kind of encourage everybody to think about, like, when was that moment you had when you were like, oh my goodness, this is a crisis. This is something that's happening right now. It's getting worse and worse. This is real. And for me, that moment was in 2017. It was in November. It was the week of Thanksgiving. And I was potty training my 2-year-old. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever potty trained a toddler before, but it requires the toddler to spend a lot of time without clothes on. And so you can either stay in your house or you can go outside. Those are your options. You cannot go anywhere else because your toddler might pee at any time. And this was Thanksgiving. It was the end of November and it was 95 degrees outside. And so we basically couldn't take my toddler outside because it was too hot. So we were stuck inside for a week with my potty training toddler because it was 95 degrees. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to look back on this and remember this is kind of like the beginning. And I know that there are many people who had that experience far before 2017, and I'm totally late to the game, but that was kind of my personal eye-opening experience. And there have been many others since then. So I also kind of knew that my kids don't have a great awareness right now of what's happening. We talk a lot about protecting our planet and protecting the environment. We talk a lot about equality and fairness, but they don't totally understand. And I know that in 10 years, when we get to 2030, they're gonna know, they're gonna get it. They're gonna look at me and they're gonna be like, Mom, what did you do? What did you do to help? And I wanna be able to look my kids in the eye and say, like, this is horrible and I'm doing everything I can. So that's my motivation, like just being able to look my kids in the eye and just like let them know that I really care about their future. So with that note, let's bring the slides back up. I'll tell you a little bit more about our actual climate team. That's my motivation, that's why I'm here. And I will also say I have 2 kids and a third due in 2 months. So a big part of what we've been doing for the last few months is really building our team and making sure that we've got this great network of people so that when I step back a little bit in a couple months, we've got a lot of people still working on everything. And you're going to meet a lot of those people today as well. So I'm really, really excited and so grateful for the other people who've been joining our team and really stepping up. So I just want to talk about, like, how do we think about this team? Like, what are our principles? What is it like to be involved in LA Forward? So just bringing it back to the basics, like, why are we here? Climate change is real. It's really bad. It's really bad for everyone. It's going to affect everybody, no matter who you are. You can't escape it. And we know that in addition to that, frontline, lower income, and communities of color are already and will be impacted the most. So it's kind of holding both of those things, that, like, this matters to all of us. This is going to affect all of us. And there's this equity issue of the people who are going to be impacted the most tend to be lower income and communities of color. And we really take a practical evidence-based approach. So those of you who know LA Forward know we do tons of, like, guides and teach-ins and educational speakers and those kinds of things. And that's because we really care about that. So we really care about, like, the fact that we don't all have endless amounts of time. You know, if you have just so many hours in a day or a week or a month, what is the most efficient and impactful thing you can do to slow climate change and promote climate justice? If you could take 20 different actions, but you really only have time for 2 or 3, like, what are the best things you can do? So providing information, kind of being efficient about our time, and just being practical and knowing that sometimes we have to compromise. Sometimes we don't get everything that we want, but we know what our goals are and we want to keep moving forward towards those goals. Okay. And really focusing on relationships. So I think that one thing those of us in organizing know is that, yeah, we care about the work. We care deeply about the work, but really what brings you back to that meeting when you've had a long week and you're tired and you're overwhelmed is knowing, you know, I know that Jason and Bonnie and Kai and Charlie and all these people are going to be there at the meeting, and I'm going to see their smiling faces and they're expecting me to be there. So we really care about kind of forging those connections and working together as well. So those are the internal connections, and then really fostering our relationships and connections with our partners and supporting other groups. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. There are a lot of amazing local organizations in Los Angeles that are just really powering ahead and leading the way, and we're here to support them. And you're going to hear from some of them today. And we want to provide a hub for Angelinos who want to get involved but aren't sure how to get started or where to get started. So I decided, it was about 1.5 years ago, that I was like, okay, climate, that's what I want to focus on. I've picked my issue now, I've narrowed it down. And then I realized, like, I literally have no idea what to do. I don't know where to get started. And I'd been involved in activism, for local activism, for a few years at that point. I had no idea what to do. And I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who feels like that. So the idea is we kind of provide a hub. We now have all of these partnerships with these different organizations throughout Los Angeles that you're going to hear about today, that are fighting climate change and promoting climate justice from all different perspectives. And so if you're somebody who wants to get involved in climate, you can come to LA Forward and let us know what you're interested in, and we'll kind of get you connected up with the right type of actions. And I think another great aspect of being, A, doing this as part of LA Forward, and B, working on climate justice in general, is how intersectional it is. So, you know, again, I was somebody who just felt overwhelmed by the number of issues that seemed so important. And one of the exciting things about working on climate for me is that I'm not just working on climate. Climate affects everything. So I'm also working on housing justice, transportation justice, racial justice, economic justice, immigration, like all of these things are impacted by climate change. And we've got our website up at the top here, laforward.org/climate. I will also put it in the chat. So in terms of general kind of goals of the meeting today, what you're going to do is you're going to hear from 4 campaign hubs that we have, as well as 2 guest speakers who are kind of associated with 2 of those hubs. And I would love for everybody who's here, if you feel like you'd like to get more involved, think about which hub kind of speaks to you. which type of action, which kind of category seems exciting to you. And then we're going to have breakout groups at the end, so you can meet some of our leaders of each of those campaigns, and you can email them to let them know that you'd like to get further involved. And I kind of think about involvement, there's like 3 different levels of involvement. We have our kind of leaders of the hubs who you're going to meet today and who've been helping plan all of these things. Then we have, what I'm hoping to do is then kind of build those hub groups with additional people who maybe you're not like the forefront leader of that group, but you really want to get more involved in like taking additional actions and helping plan events and things like that. And then we have folks who are on our climate newsletter and our Google group who maybe they don't have time to come to meetings or to help plan actions or events, but when we email out those specific actions of like call your council member or submit a written comment, they're able to take that action. So those are kind of 3 levels of involvement, and based on how much time and energy people have, you can kind of get involved at any of those levels. Okay, so to keep us on track here, what I'd like to do is, I think, invite our wonderful speaker from Stand LA. Oh my gosh, I forgot I had photos. Okay, really quick. I just wanted to share some of our work from last year. So we put together this awesome climate action guide. And this is me and Sasha and Jess Craven at our kickoff event for this guide. At the time, it was kind of a month-to-month action guide where you could have a political and a personal action every month. And you could also sign up for a newsletter. So the newsletter sign up is still there. If you go to our website that I put up in the chat, you can sign up for the climate guide. You will get a monthly newsletter that's kind of updates and actions you can take. And so just to kind of share that, like, again, this idea of like knowledge and research, but also kind of relationships and family orientation. If you go to the next slide, you can get some fun shots of our climate fair. This was like one of the last big events before the pandemic hit, when we actually got to be all together in person. You can see we had lots of kids and families there. It was super fun. We had art activities, we had hands-on, we had a lot of different groups providing lots of information. We had prizes, we had people postcarding. So it was a good time, and someday soon, hopefully we'll get to be together in person to do stuff like this again. Okay, so our first campaign hub is our oil gas phase out. And so we're gonna kick that off with our guest speaker. Mauro, are you?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Mauro, I'm gonna say your last name wrong. Mauro Kakusian?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Yeah. From Stand LA, and she's been so amazing in kind of being our sort of connection with Stand LA and keeping us up to date on everything that they've been up to, and they've been up to a lot and like huge successes, really inspiring. So we're really excited to have her here today.
Thank you, Shula. Hi, everyone. My name is Mauro Kakusian, and I'm an organizer with the Stand LA Coalition, Stand Together Against Neighborhood Drilling. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I want to start by thanking LA Forward for being a longtime ally and supporter of Stand LA and our campaign over the years. You all have been really crucial in helping us get to where we are today in the fight to end urban oil drilling. So I just wanted to show my appreciation and gratitude for all of you and your ongoing support. So let me start by giving a little background about the coalition, then I can go into where we are right now in the campaign and how you all can engage and support moving forward. So Stand LA is an environmental justice coalition working to end neighborhood oil drilling in the city of Los Angeles. The coalition is made up of 7 organizations, including 2 co-chairs, which are Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles, Communities for a Better Environment, and then we have Esperanza Community Housing, Redeemer Community Partnership, Holman United Methodist Church, Black Women for Wellness, and SCOPE, Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education. So together, all of these organizations represent communities of color and low wealth communities from South Central Los Angeles to the Wilmington Harbor area that are disproportionately impacted by neighborhood oil drilling. And so the coalition came together in order to protect the health and safety of these residents living next to these oil extraction sites. So Los Angeles, as most of you already know, is the largest urban oil field in the country. There are around 800 to 1,000 active oil wells operating in the city of Los Angeles alone. This does not include Culver City or the county at large. This is just the city of Los Angeles. And these sites are operating dangerously close to where people live, to where people go to school, right next to hospitals, daycare centers, senior homes, church parking lots, and in people's backyards. In some cases, if you pass by one of these sites, they're as close as 3 feet to where people are living. So you could actually look out your window and see an oil site operating in your backyard. So neighborhood oil drilling in LA is one of the more insidious practices, and it's an issue of racial and economic justice. The principal initiation of the campaign was around the local health impacts for those living around neighborhood oil drilling and the risks and harms when located in high-dense neighborhoods, such as in Los Angeles. It's been pretty obvious that working class communities of color are being poisoned by these facilities. Communities already suffer from bad and other forms of air pollution by living next to freeways and other industrial facilities in the city of Los Angeles. So for this campaign, neighborhood oil drilling is a social and racial justice issue. And oil drilling operations release toxic chemicals. So for those of you that don't know, toxic chemicals are used at these sites. Some of them include hydrogen sulfide, methane, benzene, carcinogen, and endocrine disruptors. And these are emitted from these sites into the surrounding neighborhood so that the communities then are breathing in these toxic fumes and begin to experience adverse health impacts, including asthma, respiratory illnesses. You hear stories about nosebleeds, nausea, headaches, and then in the worst cases, you hear stories about children and adults getting cancer. So this is very clearly a public health crisis that has only been actually exacerbated over the last year by the pandemic. So what are we doing about this? Stand LA has had an active campaign with the city for almost 5 years now. We came together to come up with a citywide solution to the problem. And there have been many reports and studies done by the city and the county, including the Department of Public Health, the City Petroleum Administrator, the City Attorney's Office, reaffirming what we already know about the health harms of living next to these sites and affirming that there is in fact a legal pathway to shutting down these sites that would be legally defensible in court. So over the course of the campaign, we were advocating for a 2,500-foot human health and safety buffer between oil sites and sensitive receptors, because the closer you live to a site, the more likely your health would suffer. And so the scientific evidence showed that a buffer of up to 2,500 feet or about a half mile would be needed to mitigate those health impacts and to ensure that we were protecting the health and safety of the people living near these sites. So it was actually an interesting activity that you did, Shula, in the beginning, where you asked folks to see how close they live to a site. So recently there was a new development late last year, it was in December, when the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee voted unanimously to pass a motion directing the city attorney to draft an ordinance declaring oil and gas extraction a non-conforming land use. What this means is essentially the city would ban all oil drilling in the city of Los Angeles, regardless of how close a site is next to a sensitive receptor. So this was huge. We were not expecting Councilmember Krikorian, who's a member of that committee, to make that motion to give that amendment. And so we are definitely taking it as a victory. And we are now asking the city for a full phase out of all oil drilling. So This is a shift in our policy, I would say. We're no longer saying we want a 2,500 foot setback. Now we are saying we want a full phase out of all oil drilling in the city of LA. So this motion was approved again by the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee in December, and now it has to be approved by a full city council vote. But before that happens, it's been referred to 3 other committees. Of course, the City of LA process and the bureaucracy behind it, right, makes it go through 3 other committees. So the first is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, also known as PLUM. The second committee is Arts, Parks, Health, and Neighborhood Councils Committee. And then the third committee that it would need to go through is the Budget and Finance Committee. And so we are anticipating that the PLUM committee is coming up soon. They're saying as soon as March 16th or sometime in early April. So we need to ensure that every committee that hears this motion supports directing the city attorney to draft an ordinance declaring oil and gas a non-conforming land use. We're also asking that they support funding amortization or phase out studies of these drill sites in the city, and then also to help create a just transition plan supporting fossil fuel workers and families supporting jobs in other industries, as well as oil wells are phased out. So that's kind of an update on our campaign, and there are some campaign activities coming up, one of which is a virtual town hall that we're organizing for Thursday, March 25th at 6 p.m. We've invited some key council members to join a panel and to just ask them directly whether or not they support Stand LA's demands. We're also going to do a virtual toxic tour of drill sites in LA. If we were able to gather in person, we would take everyone on a bus usually and drive you around through Wilmington and South Los Angeles to show you how close these sites are to homes. But instead, we're going to try to do this virtually. So that's going to be a really cool component of our March 25th virtual town hall event. So that's one thing that you all can help support in by showing up and also spreading the word. We're also having weekly Twitter storms on Thursdays, just to kind of drum up support around a full phase out and also target some of the key committee members that are going to have to vote on this motion. So we're having Twitter storms on Thursdays. And then another way, if you can support, is if you live in a key council district. So calling members of the PLUM committee to demand that they support a full phase out. So this includes Council Member Cedillo from CD1 and Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas from CD10. And then of course, showing up virtually to give public comment whenever the motion is heard in these key committee hearings. So I will stop there and I will drop links to the virtual event that I just talked about. And then when we do have the Twitter storms, I know that Shula usually is on our list and gets access to our social media kits. I could pass that information along. If you all have social media accounts, please get on there and tweet to city officials. And then the same around making phone calls. We do have draft scripts. I could also send that to Shula and then let you know whenever it's time to give public comment at one of these key committee hearings. So I'll stop there and then take questions.
Thank you so much, Maro. Yeah, put questions in the chat and I'll kind of try and field them. I will say too, don't worry. Thank you so much for all of those amazing actions. And we do plan to support you in all of those things, but don't worry if everyone here wasn't able to memorize those, we're gonna make sure and kind of send out those actions for you. So you'll be hearing about all the things you can do to contribute in a timely way. Let's see, any questions? Well, what I can do too, I'm gonna, why don't we have our other oil and gas folks introduce themselves? And in the meantime, if you do have questions, put it in the chat and I'll keep looking. And if after those other introductions, there's more questions, I'll call them out. So I want to introduce our oil and gas campaign hub leads. Or you guys can actually introduce yourselves, that's what I meant.
Who wants to go first? I guess me. Okay, I guess I'll go. Hi, everyone. I'm Jason. I'm on the oil and gas team. I'll speak really quickly about what brought me to LA Forward and what brought me to the climate justice team in particular. During the pandemic and the George Floyd protests of last year, I think it got me really thinking about what can I do to make a difference. And we were organizing a car protest in Manhattan Beach at the time, which we don't live there, but we grew up in that area. And we were looking for resources to paint on our cars, not just with slogans, but like, hey, what can you do if you wanted to help? And so we were looking for a lot of local resources. And in that research, we stumbled onto LA Forward and then checked it out for ourselves. And we've kind of been coming ever since. And what kind of drew me to the climate team was when I got to LA Forward, there's teams for everything: racial equity, housing, economic equality, everything you can think of. And I wanted to be part of all of it. It's all so important. But the more research I did, I felt like every time I would go down a rabbit hole on a particular subject, I'd always get to this point of, oh, and climate change. It's like, well, there's all these problems with racial equity in LA, and there's climate change. And it seemed like climate change exacerbates all of these justice problems that we're trying to solve. And so I thought, well, if I can only have so much time in the day or in the week, to try to touch all of these things, it seemed like, well, if I focus on climate, then, like Shula talked about earlier, we're touching all of these parts of LA and the parts of our society, from transportation to economic equality to racial equity. So I think that's what really drew me to the climate team. And then one thing I'm excited about that we have coming up for the oil and gas team is we are working on an event with the ever knowledgeable and energetic Monica Embry from Sierra Club, who is going to come and teach us a little bit about writing effective action emails for any action asks that we have for our members, be it signing petitions or showing up to make public comment. How can you really draft an email that's going to get somebody to click on it, read it, and follow through on the action? And that's coming up April 18th at 3 p.m. And then we will have an action to pair it with, depending on what exactly is going on right around that time, what meetings or what things we can work on. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. And then I'll pass it on to, I think, either Jen or Jess, whoever's here.
Yeah,
Is
I can
Jen
go
here?
next.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Sorry, was that Jess?
It was, but
so-
go.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jess. So my name's Jennifer, and I came to LA Forward first through the neighborhood councils. Sorry, not neighborhood council, the neighborhood groups. And through there was expressed interest in climate change and wanting to be involved in those types of actions. So was put in touch with Shula and was then slowly brought into the climate change team and have taken a leadership role with the oil and gas team. And so what brought me, similar to probably a lot of people here, to just action is wanting to make a difference here in my neighborhood, in my community, and knowing that there are already, like Shula mentioned, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are already a lot of organizations working hard and they just need support. So that is why I am here and why I'm excited that there are a lot of people who are here as well. Passing it on to Jess.
Thanks, Jennifer. And thanks, Jason. My name is Jessica Craven. Hi, I'll keep it super quick. There's a lot of people here, but really nice to see so many people here. And amazing, just to hear the great speaker and just to hear so much good information about this very troubling issue. And I guess I will just say that the other people on my team are, I think, superior in almost every way at doing all of this stuff. But what I can do and what I'm good at is amplification. So what I will do is I'm plugged into a lot of different groups. And when I get notifications about actions, or so this email needs to be sent right now, as some of you saw this week, there was some of that. I will jump in and post stuff like that. So if you're someone who can see an email and immediately send, you know, a comment or something, that can be really useful. And I forgot to say that the reason I am in this work is because I've been worried about climate change for about half of my life. My uncle was a climate scientist before that was like a thing. And so I've been worrying about climate change probably since I was too young. And I'm very happy to have found LA Forward, because LA Forward as an umbrella organization is so incredibly effective at actually doing things. And David is you know, kind of a wonderful mastermind genius. And then Shula has just been an incredible leader in this climate group. But the other thing I will say before I wrap up is I also do a lot of advocacy on a federal level. And also in a state legislature area. And there's so many different ways we can attack all of these things. But one of the most important things to be doing is calling our representatives, both on a state level and federally. And you don't even have to know exactly what you're saying. It's great to call about specific bills and we can help with that. But it's also just good to call and say, I'm so worried about climate change. I'm so worried about oil and gas pollution. What are you doing? And just to let them know all the time that this is at the top of their representatives' minds is a really important thing, because they're constantly prioritizing and constantly thinking about what is important for them to spend their time on. So the more we let them know, you better be spending your time on this, the better. So I'm a big advocate for using your voice, and stick around if you want to learn how. We've got lots of great tools. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. So these three amazing people, and they really are amazing. Like really, you're in good hands if you're interested in oil and gas, because Jason and Jess and Jennifer have been, you know, with us for a little while now, and just they're totally awesome. As is everyone you're going to meet today. I'll probably say the same thing, but like really, we have a great team. So if this is interesting to you, you'll join their breakout group at the end. You'll get to know them a little better and learn what's next. Mauro, let me throw you one question, just for fun. How effective are Twitter storms for politicians? Why Twitter?
Yeah, politicians love social media and love Twitter. They are super active, especially City of LA council members. They are constantly monitoring their Twitter accounts and are actively posting and tweeting on their Twitter accounts. And this has been one of the more effective ways to get their attention. And I'll just give one example from a couple years ago. When we were actually organizing an in-person town hall, we used Twitter storms to target Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson. And within an hour, he reached out to one of us, to one of the organizers, kind of responding to, hey, what are these tweets about? What's this town hall about? So it definitely works in getting their attention, especially now that we're in a pandemic and everybody is at like virtually working and on social media. So they've been really effective in the past. Yeah.
Thanks. And one last thing before we move on to our renewables group, I just want to say that one of the reasons that LA City is even looking at phasing out oil and gas right now is that Culver City did it. Also, again, thanks to a lot of Stand LA's activism, Culver City recently passed I'm probably not using the legal terms right, but passed an ordinance to phase out oil drilling. And that provided an example for LA City. And now LA City is seriously like pursuing this. And then LA City is going to be an example for LA County and for the whole state. So there is kind of this domino effect where sometimes what seems like hyper local action actually has a much greater effect than being hyper local. So I just thought that was incredibly inspiring, such a cool success story. All right, so we're gonna move on to our renewables team. And again, we have another special guest. Adam, actually, why don't I let you introduce our next guest?
I'd be happy to. Amanda Pantoja is with us from Food and Water Watch. She has some deep experience organizing and has been leading some of their efforts around the LA 100 study. I just met her recently, but am familiar with work that the organization has been doing. It's a great organization for us to partner with. And with that, I'll hand it off to Amanda.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam. And really excited to be here today to speak to all you all with LA Forward. I'm really looking forward to the work that we can do together. Like Adam said, my name is Amanda Pantoja. I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch, a longtime resident of Southeast LA, and that's kind of what sprouted me, my interest in environmental work. I was really familiar with the environmental injustice going on in my community. Particularly, I got really involved in the fight to shut down Xi Technologies, which was a battery recycling facility that got shut down a couple years ago. And I think 2015, the cleanup is still going on, but that's what really sparked my interest in environmental injustice and fighting against that. So now I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch. And if I will briefly just give an info on our campaign, a little bit of background of what we're doing. And yeah, if I can get some permission to share my screen, would that be okay? Because I have a couple slides.
Sure. Let me just find the right button. Many things. 1 second. Okay, should be good.
Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna start out with sharing with you all how we got here. Our campaign is Climate Justice for LA, and our big goal is to get the city to transition to 100% clean energy by 2030. And we can take it back 11 years ago to a historic climate march that happened 10-10-10. And Mayor Garcetti in 2010 said that he would pledge to get the city off fossil fuels. He claimed it would be the end of fossil fuels in the city. So it was back then that Mayor Garcetti was pledging that he would get the city off fossil fuels. And then in 2013, there was a commitment to phase out coal. And that was also a really historic decision in that the Intermountain Power Plant, or IPP, would be transitioning off coal and to gas power. And then in 2017 was the inception of the LA 100 study. That study came out of actually the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility blowout that happened in 2016 or 2015, I believe. And in that, the city council was pressured by community members to really look into safer sources of energy. The Aliso Canyon blowout was the largest methane leak in US history and blew out for 4 months straight until it was capped. And throughout those whole months, community members were really burdened with serious health impacts like daily nosebleeds, breathing complications, even cancer. And the community members pushed to get the city to look into cleaner sources of energy. And in 2017, the city council agreed that they would look into the study to get the city to 100% clean energy. In 2018, SB 100 was signed into law. And this is a bit more of like state work, but SB 100 put our state to 100% clean energy pathway by 2045. And that bill was put into place by then Senator Kevin De Leon, who's now currently one of our city council members. And finally, in 2019, there was a historic decision to stop gas plant repowering along the coast. The Mayor Garcetti directed LADWP to stop repowering all in-basin gas plants. And then these decisions and moments along the past 11 years finally bring us to what we have now, which is the LA 100 study report, which is going to be released this month. And we believe it's going to be officially released in mid-March. And this LA 100 study will finally analyze and illustrate 4 scenarios in which we can get our city to 100% clean energy. The neighborhood councils, I just want to give a shout out to the neighborhood councils because that was a really big tactic that we used to pressure the city councils to really look into studying clean energy pathways. We had the community neighborhood councils submit community impact statements saying that they wanted to see 100% clean energy by 2030 scenarios, and have the scenarios also involve energy efficiency as well as real solutions that did not include biogas or renewable energy credits. Some other major events and moments that brought us to where we are today, again, is in 2019, the gas plant decision, but also the Elan solar project that was passed, which is the largest solar and solar and storage project with a project labor agreement. And this is going to be a source of energy for LA, and it's not only one of the largest, but also the most affordable. So we can count for some clean energy that's accessible and affordable for Angelinos. But we obviously have to look at more of these solutions. We emphasize that LADWP is not operating in a silo. LADWP not only has to look at affordable sources of energy, but also how it's going to impact residents. We know that at the moment we are seeing many different movements and issues arise as a priority to focus on in our city. From the movement to forgive rent, to making sure that essential workers are really prioritized during the COVID pandemic, to also the movement to phase out neighborhood oil drilling, as Mara was mentioning. We want to see these investments and resources truly invested in the community, because it's really going to be our money that is going into these projects. And the money that we spend, we want to make sure that it goes into clean energy transitions that help ratepayers, renters, families, as a source of economic relief and health justice throughout this pandemic. So that is our vision for getting involved in the LA 100 study and really looking into LA's clean energy future. It's important that we look into what the clean energy future can entail for LA, because at the moment we are actually seeing some disparities in who's actually getting prioritized in clean energy programs. This is just an example. UCLA did a study of who's actually being receiving clean energy benefits. And when it is known that low income, poor communities of color use less energy as opposed to affluent white neighborhoods, but it's often these affluent neighborhoods that have the most access to clean energy programs and incentives. So that is definitely something that we want to prioritize in making sure that this clean energy future is accessible and that everyone is involved, because everyone is affected. And primarily it's going to be low-income communities of color that feel this transition the most, if not done equitably. And just some examples of some of the programs that are going on to really make sure that community voices are prioritized and brought to the table. For example, we have the Erase Utility Debt program that went on this past year as economic relief to folks experiencing utility debt through the Repower Coalition, which Food and Water Watch is a part of. They made it so that this past year, folks that are on the LADWP and get billed by LADWP received $500 checks to go towards their utility debt. The work also done by Empower is a really great coalition of community organizations that receive funds from LADWP to do community outreach, very intentional community outreach to residents, to let them know about utility bill savings and energy efficiency programs, and making sure that they are aware so that they can get involved and reap the benefits of these programs that are built for them. And that brings us to Climate Justice for LA campaign. And at the moment, we are simply waiting for the study to come out. Like I said, it's going to be coming out in March. But once the study becomes public, that's when our campaign is really going to be ramping up, because that's when not only LADWP is going to be creating community meetings to present the findings of the studies, But eventually the study will be brought to a couple committees and LA City Council for a vote. And we want to make sure that the City Council and LEDWP hears the community loud and clear in saying that we want to see a clean energy transition that's equitable, affordable, and clean, and really makes sure that these investments are brought back into the community. We want to see a really comprehensive plan that leads to the systemic change that we need to see, because we're not only fighting for clean energy and that's it. We're fighting for the health of our community. We're fighting for economic injustice. We're fighting for recovery from the current times that we're in. We simply can't go back to the normal that we had before the pandemic. We're fighting for so much more right now. And so we want to make sure that such a pathway really prioritizes well-paid jobs, community workers, protection of our family's health. And so we would love to, get LA Forward and you all involved in our campaign to, one, just ask for in participation in public comments once these do get brought up for votes. That's going to be a really big thing in making sure that these scenarios really reflect the urgency of this moment, but also the equity that we want to see manifested in these energy pathways. And we also are going to have regular meetings every month to really strategize around actions towards this campaign. We did, like I said, have our launch meeting, and that was about a week ago. And so now we're going to be regularly having meetings. So it would be great if folks could come in and join on our action planning. And Food and Water Watch also, aside from our energy work, we are having a Water Act teach-in and volunteer involvement workshop in the next few weeks on how to push for the Water Act that's currently being introduced in US legislation. So those are just a couple actions that I wanted to share with you all, and that would love to open it up if there are any other questions. I will drop any relevant links in the chat, but really looking forward to working with you all and really overall just pushing this really necessary initiative forward.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was amazing. So much information in a short time. Really appreciate it. Let's do the same thing we did last time. That worked really well. So go ahead and put questions in the chat while we have our LA Forward Renewables team leads introduce themselves, and then I will monitor the chat and look for questions in the meantime.
All right, thanks, Sheila. I'll start off for the clean energy team. My name is Adam Green. I'm an executive at a clean energy company and have been in the renewable energy and utility space for over 10 years now. Clean energy has been an interest of mine for a while. What's made it more personal for me, though, is not coincidentally like Shula's story, is having children. I remember very specifically a time when we were on vacation once, and I was walking down one of those piers that goes out onto the ocean, and there were people fishing, and I was walking with our son Adrian, who's probably 3 at the time, and he told me he was worried about all these people fishing, and I asked him why, and he said that he was worried that when he was a grown-up there wouldn't be any fish. And I remember like holding his little hand in mine and telling him that I was going to do whatever I could to make sure that there would be. So this team is a way for us to use our voices to spur large-scale action by agencies that we have direct power over, direct political influence over, and it can really make a difference. So we're going to be partnering with Food and Water Watch, with Sierra Club, with other like-minded organizations, and we're going to be participating in actions like what Amanda spoke about. First up, in the immediate term, are 3 things. First, there's going to be a, hi, Adrian. Can I talk to you in just a minute? I'd like you to wait. Okay, can you put the cats in here then? All right. The cats are being too loud for their movie. I'm sorry, everyone. We're going to do three things to start out. One is have a teach-in. So we're going to organize a session that I'm going to lead and discuss for the layperson the fundamentals of energy and utilities. What is electricity? How is it generated? Why does this matter? How do these systems interact with each other? What do we need to know in order to make informed comments in these public processes? Item two is that we are going to be preparing ourselves as a team to participate in the LA 100 study. So educate ourselves and get ready. And then three is to chime in when they have these public workshops. It's a great opportunity for us to submit meaningful comments and direct our city council members to take the study seriously and direct LADWP, which is a department of the city government, to transition quickly to emissions-free sources. Finally, something that we have the opportunity to do together as a group is to support each other and members of associated groups in transitioning our own utility supply to 100% renewables. There are ways to opt in today with a click of a few buttons to 100% clean energy. And I think that's a valuable resource that we can provide like-minded folks who want to do as much as they can as soon as they can. Let me hand it off to Bonnie to go next.
Thanks, Adam. Hey, everyone. My name is Bonnie Ho, and I joined LA Forward more formally about a year ago. I was drawn to LA Forward because I thought it was a great thought leader in really making sense of a lot of local politics, especially. And I would say since joining the climate team, I have learned a lot to understand climate change. And, last year was particularly really tough to see like all the wildfires and the air quality in Southern California and the fact that it wasn't safe to go outside. I think Shula was talking in her example about how it's too hot to go outside. And last year it was just, it's not safe to breathe and go outside. And so I think that was a really impactful moment where I thought, this is really bad and we really need to do something about it. But I would also say that like the climate group I've learned a lot about like how to make sense of things and like, and from other stakeholder groups. Recently, I did attend the Food and Water Watch Kickoff, a campaign launch about climate justice. And I think I've been able to like really see in all this depressing news about climate change, so like really the potential for, in that presentation, they talked about moving from an extractive economy to a living economy. And I think that vision is really helpful for me to go forward. And in being part of this group, I would just add that I've been learning a lot, and I've been privy to these Sierra Club meetings and the Food and Water Watch meetings. So as I'm learning, whoever wants to join this group, we'll all be learning together. So yeah, I would welcome anybody who's interested in joining this hub. And yeah, so I think that's from me. I'll pass it on to Kai. You want to go next?
Yeah, that'll be perfect. Thanks, Bonnie. Hi, my name is Kaitisha Lathan. Everyone calls me Kai for short. I am currently attending, I'm a senior at Cal State Northridge for microbiology. So I'm a junior scientist. The reason why I think I got involved with LA Forward definitely, I would say, surrounds everything to do with just environmental racism. I guess giving a quick example, definitely my mother just recently moved to Compton. And so it was really interesting kind of just driving around and seeing how different, unfortunately, even though we live a few miles from each other, how different my neighborhood is compared to hers. And it just got me thinking about how these people are just being exploited and their resources are being exploited, and how there's not really much being done about it. And what is being done about it is taking a long time. And so it's as many people that can help, you know, it's important to help. And I think that was the main reason why I felt the need to get involved with exactly what's going on, and just seeing everything going on with the changes in our climate was a very big thing for me. I think what I'm most excited about for this hub in particular, and Adam lightly already, well, really deeply touched on it, and so did Bonnie, was just helping LA Forward members convert to renewable energy. I think that that is a very, very big step that we all can do today, as Adam said, and it might be something that's small and it can go very much up to something that's big, just like, for example, solar, or for example, something as small as changing the light bulbs in your house, or just turning off your lights just from room to room. So I'm really excited about just being involved in helping in any way that I can to aid people in learning more about this information, about how we can help, and just getting people involved in having these conversations, even these really difficult conversations during this time.
All right, so thank you so much. So again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but these are just like the best people. I mean, other than Adam, who's like, okay, we're married, in case you didn't quite catch that one. No, Adam is also awesome, but will also be gone in a few weeks when our baby is born. But Kai and Bonnie, like, you're going to be in just amazing hands with them. They're just really, really wonderful. Okay, so for the sake of time, I am going to really quick, let's introduce you to our other two campaigns. We've got, I think is circular economy next. Caitlin, who have we got?
Public banking is
banking.
next.
Yes, we've got public banking, we've got circular economy. We're going to introduce you to them, and then we're going to break out into groups based on your interests. So hang in there. We're almost to those breakout groups, which is going to be the really fun part of this meeting.
Okay. So I will take it from there. Thanks, Shula. So my name's Caitlin. I'm not an expert by any means on public banks or banking in general, but I have been serving as kind of like the contact person for staying in touch with key partners and passing on key actions that folks may be able to take. So I'm going to just provide more info on the Public Banking Hub. And our goal is to establish a socially and environmentally responsible municipal bank for our city. So first, what's a public bank? Well, in a nutshell, all banks, you know, they earn their profits off interest payments. And for private banks, you know, your Wells Fargos, your Chases, this profit goes directly to stakeholders. And these stakeholders are typically not tied physically or ideologically to the communities they serve. And they're pretty much focused by gaining more money, gaining more profit. And this usually results in investments in harmful and extractive industries, like the fossil fuel industry. So public banks, this is an alternative to that system. They're not for-profit institutions. They'd be owned by a local government, and therefore they would be owned by the communities in which they serve. So unlike private commercial banks, all of the public banks' profits would belong to us. So obviously this has a lot of implications for housing justice, transportation justice, criminal justice, and rebuilding our local economy given the pandemic. So, but how does it help us achieve our climate goals? So a few things. It keeps our money local, and by making banks a local democratic institution, we can use those local dollars to invest in our priorities, like immediate, just, equitable climate action. It also maximizes tax dollars. So instead of paying millions in fees every year that goes straight to private shareholders' pockets, we'd have more money to directly fund critical infrastructure we need to address climate change, like building the renewable energy that we need to see, or building up sustainable water infrastructure, which is also very important. And then the last thing I'll point out is that it creates the financial framework, the financial backbone we need to invest from those extractive industries and reinvest directly into our communities. So funding local green jobs, building climate resilient infrastructure, building up the places that we live in and love. And so our hub is working closely with our ally who's been leading this initiative on the local, state, and now federal level for years, Public Bank LA. So this Friday, they actually have a virtual briefing where we'll talk more about the technical aspects of a public bank and also get folks input on how it could be structured. So if you're interested, you can join our breakout session later, or you can pop your name and email in the chat if you can't hang out, and I can send you the info. And just for sake of time, I'm gonna pass it over to Tanner so he can share a little bit about his personal story and why he's here and why he finds public banking important. Go ahead, Tanner.
Thanks so much, Caitlin, and just great to see all of you here. I'm just happy to be here and to be a part of this. Like Caitlin said, my name's Tanner, and I'm still relatively new to LA Ford. I actually just moved to LA back in July, so I'm here for less than a year. But I knew I wanted to get involved at the local level because I think there's so much we can do organizing block by block, and I want to work with my neighbors to make the place that we all live a better place. And LA Ford seemed like a great forum and a hub for that. So I was grateful to be welcomed in with open arms to LA Ford and to get involved with all this really impactful work. And I've gotten more deeply involved since I first started. I'm working with the new Leadership Hub on member re-engagement to help engage people who've come to meetings before. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, feel free to shoot me a message. And I'm really interested in climate. I've worked in climate for a long time. I work a lot on the Sustainable Development Goals at the UN, and it's just been important for me because I think it's the largest existential challenge that faces all of us, and it's going to affect everyone, like Shula said earlier. And I'm stoked about this public bank idea because I think a really cool thing about local organizing, especially in a place like LA, is that we have more freedom to innovate in terms of what we do. And I think that what the pandemic has showed us, and just how wealth inequality has manifested, and just the state of the world today, it showed us that we really need to be democratizing our institutions and our societies as much as possible. And I think this is a really great opportunity to show what it looks like to build a democratic institution and to do banking in a different way and to allocate money in a different way. So I'm really excited about this, and I think it'll help us build a more equitable society, and fight against racism, fight against climate change. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So thank you all again for being here, and hope to see you in the breakout group.
Thanks, Caitlin and Tanner. And again, like another group that you're just being great hands. Caitlin and Tanner are a little bit newer to our climate group, but like they just both bring so much energy and creativity and excitement. And Caitlin particularly has been so proactive about this connection with Public Bank. I'm just so, I'm really grateful because of that. We're able to kind of form this newer campaign hub, and I think it's a really important one. So join their breakout group. Again, you'll be in great hands. All right, let's move on to our circular economy waste reduction. Jamie. Hi.
was on mute. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie, and I'm also pretty new to LA Forward. I have a background in environmental public policy, and I work for an environmental consulting group, and I do a lot of consulting for EPA and specifically the Office of Water and groundwater, drinking water. So I've done work that just like covers a lot of ground, but mostly at the federal level. So financial responsibility for plugging oil and gas wells, sustainable infrastructure development for drinking water systems, supporting tribal clean water programs, a lot of different things. But I've always wanted to do something more local and be engaged on a more local level to feel like I'm making a difference in my community and for my children. So LA Forward provided me the ideal opportunity to get involved, and they made it so easy to just jump in and get started on something. And so I'm here helping with this concept of circular economy. And I think we all can recognize that we live in a society that produces a lot of waste, and it's just built around a use and throw away kind of just everything is built on use and throw away. So the concept of a circular economy is one that aims to grow our economy using products that are designed to be reused rather than just thrown away. And so some of the main principles of this are designing out waste and pollution from the process and keeping products and materials in use and regenerating natural systems. We all know that our natural ecosystem is essential for clean water, for clean air, and the more we can preserve those functions, the better off we will be. So one of, if you go to the next slide, one of the things that we're focusing on is plastics, then our use of plastics in our economy from every level. And so why is this something that's critical to addressing climate change? And I'm sorry, the graphic is very small, but I'll talk you through it and you'll get the point. So plastic starts out with oil and gas extraction. So whenever we develop new plastics, it comes from oil and gas drilling. And as we know, that is a lot of, that causes a lot of pollution and health problems. And we are still building pipelines in the US to deliver oil and gas for plastics production, new pipelines, which kind of astounds me. So, so then we go into production. The development of plastics is a highly pollutive process. And then we go into use. People are exposed to a lot of toxins. And then of course, the after use, where we either dispose of it in a landfill or incinerate it, or it's shipped off to another country where we don't even know what happens to it. And I feel like I identify as the generation that was like the recycling generation. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, where grew up and it was about recycling. You know, you can make a difference for the environment because you recycle. And recycling is important. And we find out that oil and gas was just promoting this so they could continue to develop new plastic products. So people would feel good about sending them off to be recycled. And it's been revealed that recycling is not as much of a solution as we once thought. And very few plastics ultimately can be or will or are recycled. So plastics are everywhere in our society. And so if you, I guess, I wanted to just mention some of the things we're doing at LA Forward to reduce plastics use in our society. And I think that this also ties in with social justice, because we as individuals can do some things to reduce our plastics use, but some people don't have options. They go to the grocery store, and what options do they have for buying food that's not in plastic? Or what options do people have if they want to go buy a loaf of bread? Or everything's in plastic. So what we need is to support legislation that supports a circular economy, and particularly reducing single-use plastics. but we also support similar legislation that might reduce food waste. But some examples of local efforts that we're following are expansion of Los Angeles Ordinance Skip the Stuff, which reduces takeout waste. Pasadena is working on a zero waste plan, which has suffered. They have not kept their targets. And so we work with Ban Single-Use Plastics, an organization that is following these sorts of activities very closely, because we would like to support Pasadena in achieving a zero waste plan. Glendale Environmental Coalition is working on banning polystyrene and plastics. And some of you may have known that there was a Senate Bill 54, which would have created a framework for reducing single-use plastic and packaging waste. But unfortunately, that did not have enough votes to pass the floor of the State Assembly in 2020. And so we expect that it will come back, and we're watching that closely so that we can, support it through our voices to our representatives, and in other ways to get people informed and knowledgeable of what's going on and hopefully gain public support for that kind of legislation. So a few other things that we tend to do is look for local and state representatives that do not accept funding contributions from oil and gas industry. People we know are looking out for our interests rather than those of the oil and gas company. And I'm sure that this is something that touches on all of these activities that we're doing. Every person that you've heard speak today are probably looking for that. And then finally, we collaborate with partners who share our goals. And I mentioned one of our main partners right now is Ban SUP, Ban Single-Use Plastics. And they're doing just a lot of great work keeping on top of what's going on. And it's been very hard with the pandemic. We've seen a big spike in the use of plastics for takeout. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done to figure out how to get back to our previous level of what's normal for plastics use and waste. And I think that supporting legislation is really the best way to do that, because it needs to come from the top down. Companies need to be thinking about how they package their products, and the burden can't be on people who really just don't have any other options. So I think that's a quick summary of what we're doing. And I guess I can pass it on to Shula unless anybody else has questions.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm actually going to ask people to save their questions for the breakout groups for the sake of time. Jamie, again, just like awesome person to be. If you're in her group, you're gonna be in great hands. She's been a good friend of mine for a few years now. She's got a ton of environmental experience, and she's just a very organized, awesome person. So yeah. So what I would like people to do is we're gonna break out into groups, so you can introduce yourselves and ask more questions about the breakout group and kind of sign up to be more involved in that group. So what we'd like you to do is put the number of the group before your name. So if you click on participants and then you kind of hover your mouse over your name and you click on more, you can say rename. And then so go to rename and then rename yourself with a 1, 2, 3, or 4 prior to your name. And that will correspond to which breakout group you'd like to go into. And that will make it really easy for us to put you into groups. And can someone remind, what are the 3 questions we were going to do in the groups? Who has the notes? I'm forgetting. Caitlin. Oh. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think we were just hoping to kind of have folks introduce themselves, why they're here, what kind of the level of involvement they want to be in, kind of get their contact info. That was my understanding.
Say your name, what neighborhood, pronouns if you would like, what neighborhood you're from. Okay. Say why you're interested. What's the silly question?
That's what we have in the notes. Let's see. Do you want me to nominate some candidates while people are deciding?
Yeah, give us a silly answer in your breakout group.
All right.
And please put your number at the beginning of your name before your name to make it a little easier. There we go. All right, so your name, pronouns, neighborhood, why you're interested, and then you get to pick, your group gets to pick a silly question to answer. You can name David Levitis's baby. I don't care that you've named your baby already, David.
Already picked out a name, so.
You might need to reconsider.
If you could become a very generous monthly donor, maybe I'll consider. That's all I gotta say.
Who would you be from Captain Planet and why? Or what thing can you never figure out if it's recyclable or not? All right, and that note, let's do the breakouts.
All right, I'm working breakout rooms here. There's a few people who still have not picked a breakout room, but I'm gonna go ahead and open the rooms. And if you have not yet put a number in front of your name, if you do so in the next few minutes, I will make sure you get into a group.
Coming back, I was just saying that I should stop trying to plan 90-minute meetings because we always go over, and I'm just so glad you all have so much to say to each other. And I appreciate you hanging in there. Let's hear back real quick from each group. Like what's one really interesting question or I don't know, funny thing, best silly response that came up in your group? Let me see. I'll call out the groups backwards this time. Let's do circular economy first.
I can go. We had a really cool conversation about what is recyclable and what is not. And a lot of us are just like, who knows? So if anyone wants to chime in too, we are going to put someone in touch with someone else to help figure out if we can recycle some things that have been donated.
There's a great guide to that. So if you download our climate guide that we put together last year, we actually have a whole section on circular economy and plastics, and we've got some good info in there. Most of the info is really that, like, unfortunately, most things don't get recycled, and so recycling should be sort of the last resort after reusing and not using and all that. But yeah, there's some good information there. Thanks. All right, public bank.
Sorry, yeah, so some of us answered the question about what are you confused about if it's recyclable or not, and there is confusion if you can recycle almond milk containers or how small things can be that are recyclable, like bottle caps and stuff. So
all right, this is clearly on everybody's mind. I mean, we did post it as a question, so fair enough. All right, renewables group, what did you have?
Well, not so much. Well, definitely a comment. We got a cool comment about how to take care of peanut butter in jars. So pretty much making sure that you actually put water in the jar, but you kind of, utilize that throughout the, yes, I had to say it, Matthew, I did, and just put water in that. And then over days, you just make sure you shake it. And then with like day 5, you just pour out everything and it's completely clean. So that's like one way to get all the peanut butter out of your jar. Just take
That's
time,
what we do. And we have a lot of peanut butter jars sitting on our counter all the time.
There you
I mean,
go.
that's the best way.
We could not let you leave an LA Forward meeting without learning a practical skill. So there you go.
That was my question too, so thanks. For jelly jars, thank you.
All right, and last but not least, oil and gas.
Yeah, we got into talking more about policy and stuff that we were working on. But one thing we'll share real quick was sometimes the containers that come from from takeout that like they look like they're cardboard, but like they're kind of waxy and like are they really cardboard and are they plastic? What are they? And so there was a talk about that. But I just want to do some quick shout outs from our group, which is like how people got here and why. And it was just really cool to see like Polly's here from like directly from the climate fair from pre-COVID time. So good on the crew that put that
Polly
together.
helped us paint our signs for the climate fair. So.
That's awesome. Awesome. And we have people here. We had Judith is here trying to collaborate and not do double effort, which is always good. We're always here for efficiency. And Sam, ever the forward thinker, is already thinking, hey, once we solve oil and gas, what's next? And we're already talking about the water crisis. So a lot of good stuff.
I like that optimism there. Once we solve it. Awesome. All right, so please make sure that your group leader has, oh, Caitlin, would you put up the contact info for the group leaders again real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Make sure that your group leader has your email address. If you would like to be involved in more than one group, you're welcome to email another group leader as well. Our plan from here is we will contact everybody, or your campaign hub is going to contact you, and we're going to set up some small group meetings so that you can kind of get looped into the specific action campaign that team is working on and figure out next steps. So keep an eye out. We'll be sending out emails soon. And you've got the group leaders up on the slide here. We'll leave that up for a minute. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. We were really focused on the election for a while, and then we've been kind of just regrouping and figuring out where to go next. So I'm kind of thinking of this as like our kickoff for the year of launching all of these awesome actions that we have and really pivoting away from the election and back to the local climate action that we're really excited about. So thanks for joining us, and I'm hoping that we'll see all of you again very soon.
And one quick thing, which is not about membership. Shula mentioned that a lot of this work intersects with housing work and transportation work. Well, we actually have our kickoff meetings for housing coming up later this week. So I'll put the link in there for our housing work. So you're invited to come to that. And then I'll also say that we have a transportation group as well. And their meeting is also this week. So there's a tremendous amount happening. So just check it out. And again, if you're interested in, supporting LA Forward Action with a monthly donation, we'd be incredibly grateful for that as well. We're people powered, not just when it comes to our volunteers, but also when it comes to our finances. So thank you so much. Sorry to bogart you, Shula, but yeah, I'll turn it back over to you if there's anything else. But check out the links in the chat, and it's great to be with you all.
Thanks, everyone. That's all we got today. See you soon.
Thank you so much for putting this together.